to From Stem to Stern, the video panel series from the Farmer Navigator, where expert panels will delve into pertinent industry topics in more detail. During each of these peer-to-peer forums, we'll navigate the full life cycle of biopharmaceutical innovation. Thanks very much for joining me today, both of you, Stuart and Gerhard. First of all, obviously we're here today for my next instalment of From Stem to Stern. We'll be talking about tailored approaches, or approaches for tailored therapeutics. Could you please, both of you, introduce yourselves and provide us with a little bit of background as your current roles and your industry experience? And Gerhard, let's start with you.
Thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting for me to be able to talk to you. And my name is Gerhard Bauer. I was a full professor at UC Davis for 18 years, professor of hematology, oncology, and cell therapies. I was also the designer and director of the UC Davis Good Manufacturing Practice Facility. And now, after I retired, I only retired for practically 2 weeks. I was asked to get back into the field, and I opened up my own company. It was a consulting company first, and it developed into a full-fledged cell and gene therapy manufacturing company with a laboratory and a clean room.
Again, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's fun to be able to talk about the technology because I am a technologist by background. I did a degree in physics and a PhD in biophysics at Imperial College London. I joined TTP, where I currently am, about 12 years ago, really helping to bring scientific breakthroughs into real-world products. I'm currently leading a team working in advanced therapies, and what we're doing is developing custom hardware and custom automation to enable some of those more complex bioprocesses, the kind that you find in advanced therapies. So it's great to be on and talk about this topic.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we've seen obviously a shift in the therapeutic landscape over recent years within our industry. Companies are moving away from those broad scope, blockbuster style drugs of the past and kind of moving to those more niche treatment platforms. You've both got an amazing amount of experience within that area. So drawing on those experiences, could you highlight the reasoning behind this shift and the impact that it's having on the industry, both for innovators and perhaps service providers, if possible? Stuart, do you want to kick us off for this one?
Yeah, sure. So I think, it's quite a broad trend that you've identified there about the reduction in blockbuster drugs. I would say drug development has got harder over recent years. And one size fits all drugs are quite rare now. What the dynamic seems to be is that new drug candidates might only be effective for a small segment of the population. Maybe you're targeting a specific gene or a specific pathway, and essentially it's just got more personalized. You need to, I suppose what it means for innovators is you're allowed to look at those kind of smaller segments of the population. For example, autologous CAR T, it's actually based on your own immune system. Right? Can it get more personalized than that? But it has spawned an entire industry with now thousands of therapies in trials. So it's actually been really good for innovation, this niche aspect, as you call it.
Let me follow up on that. This is a very important topic that we are touching on today. Imagine 20 years ago, so many people were dying of hematologic malignancies, blood cancers. They were just dying. They went through many rounds of chemotherapy. They had a miserable life. And at the end, everybody knew what the outcome would be. This has completely changed the paradigm of having to die from hematologic malignancies. Has completely turned around because with individualized therapies, CAR T-cell therapies, we can actually cure people. And this has now been shown over the last 15 years We have surviving people over the last 15 years and they live a normal life. And I am so entirely grateful for that. This is the innovation. This is not an off-the-shelf drug. This is a completely new development. And this was actually spawned by academia, which then was taken over by industry and was industrialized to bring that therapy to patients. But we are not completely done yet. There's so much more we need to do with these new individualized therapies, more research, more applications, and more broad diversity of such treatments.
Yeah, that's really interesting and absolutely true. We're seeing those curative options now, which is something that's, absolutely mind-blowing, for most people. So, given that we are looking at these kind of curative options rather than a sort of, a treatment paradigm, should we say, where you're taking a tablet for a long time or being given a medicine for a long time. How should companies define the long-term value of these sort of tailored and personalized therapies during the clinical development process, but also still managing to kind of keep it at a reasonable cost for the patient, do you think? Gerhard, can you maybe give us some answers to that?
Yeah, I was in the middle of this. So first in academia, we tried to develop these therapies for clinical trials. Clinical trials are limited, and of course, they're often also not giving you the full picture because you often select certain patient populations. But when it became more broadly available and many more patients would be eligible for these treatments, it was found that the treatments are way too expensive. However, this has something to do with providing a quality product with the appropriate testing at the end and making sure that the product really passes all the muster that we need to pass for these, because you don't want to harm anybody in such a treatment, particularly when it's a novel treatment. It can set back the field, and we don't want that. Now, we have to think very carefully how we want to really make this available to many more patients and possibly worldwide. We have a discrepancy currently between countries that can afford it and countries that cannot afford it. We have a discrepancy between insurance providers that will pay for it and that will not pay for it. And we want to close that gap. It is going to be a very important aspect of our industry to get together, find ways to improve manufacturing, make it cheaper, but not letting the quality slide, and making sure that everybody has access to these therapies at the end.
Yeah, and actually to pick up on what Gerhard was saying earlier about the patients, right? So if you think about that treatment journey, where you're having to go through many rounds of chemo, you might have to do a second line, or you might have to do a third line of treatment. These as you stressed, these therapies are curative, right? Um, and people need to price that in, or healthcare systems probably need to think a little bit differently about the value of these. If you think about it, you're replacing almost a lifetime of care with kind of a single shot. It's almost like a shotgun, that a very precise ability to remove that disease. So why shouldn't that sort of approach be smoothed over many years? Why can't we have installment-based payments? Why can't we say, actually, you do need to prove kind of long-term efficacy of the product in order to get the full reimbursement for it? And those are exactly the sort of models that people are looking at right now. It's just that kind of contrast, which Gerhard put so nicely at the beginning, is that contrast between what it used to be like, that kind of chronic, long-term treatment pathway with this one shot up front. But if we can kind of find a way to make it look a little bit more like that, the value actually looks really, really good. Because suddenly you're not having to get people come to the hospital, travel several times a month. Suddenly you're not having to kind of source and store all of those drugs. It's actually much better overall for the healthcare system. So I think in the future we'll find that it actually frees up a lot of resources. It's just people are not used to this way of treating disease right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Gerhard, I'm going to go back to, you mentioned there about the manufacturing. Obviously, that's something that's linked to affordability massively, as we know within the industry. In terms of the personalized tailored therapy area, what are the biggest hurdles facing companies when it comes to their manufacture and trying to keep those costs down? Are there any specific approaches or technologies that are helping companies in this area, do you think?
I want to start bringing you back again, many, many years, how we actually manufactured these therapies in academia. We had a flask. We had a tissue culture flask. Remember that? The tissue culture flask where you actually had a screw cap and you had to pipette in a biosafety cabinet. And we had a smaller flask and then we had a bigger flask and we grew the cells in there and we looked at them under the microscope. And this was all done in an open system because you have to open up the flask, you have to pipette in and then pipette out. And this was extremely time consuming. Of course, it was dependent on really well-trained personnel that had very good sterile techniques. So you didn't do anything to contaminate the flask and the culture. And then it had to be tested also by hand. And all of that was a 2-week process, seriously. And it took skilled personnel from the university. And it took myself to look over this at the end, having quality control and quality assurance at the end. Now, take that process and move it over into industry. Do you know how much that costs? Also, you have to keep the same process when you have once gotten it approved by the regulatory agencies. You have to keep it, that open system, all the way to the end, and you have to try to manufacture these treatments individually for each patient. This is almost impossible to do. So you have to think about how you're going to automate that. What are you going to do to make this reproducible? Bring the costs down in a way so you apply the same procedure, but of course with the different cells from different patients. And now you have to have an automated quality control system in there too. Automated batch records. Batch records is something that is necessary to again perform this task exactly like you did before over and over again. It's written down, make it electronic, make it easily followable. You can follow the procedure by just looking at an iPad or something like that in a laboratory and have that automatically checked off. Then you can have automated inventory control, for instance. And then what really boils down to the most important aspect is the less human intervention you have with the manufacturing, the better it will be for the outcome of the product. And I'll let it sit at that.
Stuart, do you want to weigh in here?
Well, I couldn't agree more with what Gerhard's described. Yeah, I'm all for helping to remove that kind of operator variability from the process. It's actually well, it's really nicely put. It's easier to say than it is to achieve in practice, though, because you're really trying to imagine what is it that a human's doing? What is it that person is looking at the bottom of the flask that allows them to say this is a good product or this is not a good product? So that there's actually a lot of cell-based tools that are being developed at the moment, which can handle fragile cells, better cell sorters for fragile cell analytics, for example, image recognition using machine learning and AI to help to stage those incubations so that you don't have to have people coming in at the weekend to change the media. But maybe just thinking about a specific example where we've seen a real impact is in this closure of open processes. So exactly how Gerhard would describe me, you've got people working in an isolator. If you think about how much those rooms and how much that equipment costs per square foot, it really doesn't make any sense at all for you to be running an industrial process in that area. What you can do instead is have a process which is intrinsically not exposed to the atmosphere, and then you can move that into a completely different lower grade clean room with lower costs. And this is exactly what we identified with a company that we're working with. where there were several different steps of the process, but by incorporating these into single-use disposables, it's possible then to load, leave the room, wait for it to complete, and then come back and take your product off. And that's the sort of transformation that automation can achieve, bringing down facility costs, taking out the variability, improving standards, and removing labor from the process. That is going to transform the way that these therapies scale. It's really quite exciting.
Yeah, absolutely, for automation and moving away from that clean room kind of facility where we're removing the human intervention. We're seeing a lot of discussion about this kind of bedside, decentralized or point of care manufacturing. So, what are the key quality risks associated with point of care manufacturing, and how can they be mitigated to ensure patient safety? Because obviously that's a massive intervention with the user there making the drug at the bedside. So, Stuart, do you want to start us off with that one?
Yeah, so exactly that scenario you're sort of painting of we're not we're saying that it's possible to move away from a very centralized, controlled manufacturing process where you've been able to train every single operator on the process and they're all experts. Whereas I think what we could move towards is this paradigm where operators are actually able to produce these therapies without needing that sort of training, right? So we might have people who are not trained in GMP manufacturing, who aren't trained in keeping the environment clean, who don't necessarily have the kind of the regulatory nous. And the solution there, and you won't be surprised to hear me say it, is automation. Because if you have a system that does the same thing every time with very minimal user intervention, you reduce the need for that kind of upskilling. You close the process so you don't have to worry about the environmental contamination. And all of the quality and the regulatory oversight is baked in to the fact that the instrument is logging what it's doing, recording, creating digital records. So, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what Gerhard thinks about that vision, whether it rings true. Is that what's needed?
Let me play devil's advocate.
Uh-huh.
This is all very nice and good as long as it works. The moment something goes wrong and you have an untrained person, you're playing with the life of a patient. Please keep that in mind. You are producing an individualized product for a person, and it could be your grandma. And think this like that all the time. You want to make sure that the product that you're making can go into the patient in spite of any little issues that could arise. We must think of that. So therefore, I think it's a double-edged sword. It's very nice to try and put it into a decentralized location, maybe right next to the hospital or in the hospital, and trying to automate this so that you just have to put a bag into a machine and out comes the final product. I don't think it's going to happen like that because it's too dangerous. And I would not want to be treated like that. If I were a patient, I would like to have somebody with knowledge overlook that product, making sure that the product is properly manufactured. So I think it's going to be both. We're going to have places of excellence, I believe, where this should be manufactured. This may be many places of excellence because now we can actually afford it, because we may not need to build such an expensive clean room. We can do this in a lower grade environment. Here, for instance, we would say ISO 8. And we're going to have a closed system, and we're going to have a wonderful product that's going to be coming out, which is really good at the end, that we must have quality control and quality assurance. And for that, now I have another issue that I want to say. It is not standardized at the moment. We must standardize our quality control and quality assurance on such product manufacturing. And this can only happen with an electronic system. You cannot do this on paper. Try to bring paper everywhere, notebooks and paper and everything, and then you lose a page. I mean, come on, not in this time. And we need to do this electronically, and we have to standardize that. There are systems out there where we can use a standardized protocol, standardized quality control, batch records, and everything. And we need to share that with everybody else so we get onto one common denominator. And that would also help us going into the right direction. So, in summary, it's good to think about decentralized manufacturing. Maybe in the far future, it's even possible with a lot of AI oversight and everything else that's happening. And AI can actually replace some of this quality control that's being done with humans currently. But it's going to take a little while. And we also have to make sure that we are standardized with our procedures.
I think what you're saying is we're going to have to take steps on the way to get to that position, right? So maybe to be quite slightly less ambitious, but I like to kind of imagine the kind of final destination, because it defines the route that you need to take to get there. So we already mentioned you're almost certainly going to have to close things. You're going to have to close these processes if you want to have it even at the lowest level of distribution, even at the kind of the least ambitious level of distribution. You definitely have to close things. You're going to have to, like you said, standardize things. And absolutely, if you want to help the operators, then some level of AI guidance eventually is going to enable that. But yeah, so some centers where people are used to doing this sort of manufacturing is probably a really good halfway house towards that final vision.
In the future, I would like to see the following, and this is going to be funny, and people will be laughing at me because I'm an old man. I've seen everything before computers came around. Everything. There were only phones, and I had a rotary dial, and I had to learn everything from the scratch. Nobody taught me computers in school. I had to learn everything on my own. Now at the end, now I use AI, and I love it. And now I want to see a little cart with a robotic arm that goes up and down and has a camera that goes through all my aisles where I have all my reagents and materials stored. And I want it to go up and look at the reagents and say, oh, this is expired. This needs to go out. There's so little in there. Oh, don't do it. And then it looks into the refrigerator and says, no, this is the wrong storage temperature and things like that. That is exactly what I want to see. And this would really take off the burden of having to do everything by hand. And this would reduce a lot of error.
Brilliant. Thank you both. I want to go to the regulatory landscape in a bit more detail. Obviously, clinical trials are massively important for our industry, and they normally incorporate very large and diverse patient populations in order to test for efficacy and safety of drug products. So how are the regulators adjusting for the niche target audience of these personalized therapies so that they can perform an appropriate evaluation? Gerhard, do you want to go first?
I say something terrible again. People won't like to hear it. They're not at all. Nothing. Seriously. So we have to get to that point still. I have seen over the last years actually a divergence of all the regulatory affairs everywhere. Now, Europe, UK, well, are they talking a little bit, but sometimes not. So, America currently, Europe, no, we're not talking. Asia, Australia, are we all talking to each other? Not really. So, what is happening currently? Everybody is trying to do a very good job in their own way. But is that going to be helpful for everybody? I don't think so. In the long run, we will need to get to a point where we actually can harmonize our regulatory affairs. And what we would like to do is in the industry is to produce a product that we can export to other countries, or we possibly want to import other things from other countries. And that is not so easy at the moment. It has become even more difficult in the long run. So I would say that is something that we absolutely need to work on. This needs to be harmonized, and we need to again find ways to infuse a system that with electronics that will allow us to do that even better.
Yeah, I mean it's a real shame that there isn't more harmonization, because the opportunities are fantastic. I mean, I was talking to a rare disease executive the other day, just after the news about baby KJ came out, and he was so excited about this opportunity to turn an N of one into a more standardized process that could be regulated like a platform. I mean, it would involve kind of approving the diagnostic pathway. You'd have to feed it into the therapy design and think about it, like where and how the manufacture is done. So it's not an easy thing to regulate, but with the right frameworks, it could be possible. And I'm hoping that some of the bigger players, some of the large pharma who are well invested in personalized therapies, could have that level of influence with the regulators across the world, because what they want and what we all want is the ability, if somebody's come up with a really innovative pathway that enables this sort of almost miracle cure for a single individual, you want to be able to kind of pick that up and place it in a different jurisdiction. It doesn't make sense to have to reinvent the wheel. So yeah, I'm with Gerhard on regulatory alignment. I just think the potential is so huge.
And last of all, then, if I could ask you both to give us a capsule kind of take on what you anticipate is going to happen over the course of the next couple of years in terms of personalized and tailored therapies. Are we going to see them become more mainstream, do you think, or are the challenges maybe a little bit too difficult for us at the moment? Where do you think we're going to be? Stuart, do you want to go first for us, please?
Yeah, sure. And I'll just pick up from what I was saying about the potential. I think the benefits of personalized therapies are way too significant to be ignored. But I think what is happening is that the industry is maturing. If you look back at monoclonal antibodies, it took decades to solve their commercialization challenges. And in the advanced therapies industry, we're already seeing end-to-end platform automation companies. You've got the likes of Solaris, Multiply Labs, you've got Cellular Origins. What needs to catch up, I think, is maybe the next generation of manufacturing equipment that goes into these platforms. They need to be smarter. They need to be automation friendly. And they need to be able to cope with the full diversity of cell therapies that are coming out. I would say, if I'm kind of giving advice and saying what I'd like to see, it's automation baked into the design, digital baked into the design of these processes, and a bit of future proofing. So that process needs to be able to adapt to a new type of equipment coming out, or a new analytical technique for the QC. So embedding that level of flexibility in some of these systems is really important. And just finally to talk about cross-disciplinary collaboration. So you'll hear kind of Gerhard's from an academic background and immunology, and I'm a physicist, but we're both trying to tackle the same challenge, and I think it is going to take this level of cooperation in order to solve some of the fundamental problems in scaling for the industry.
Brilliant. And Gerhard?
As you see, I'm a filmmaker. That's why I have
sorry.
Yes, and I like to talk to a lot of people with my films. And I have done this in a way so that people can understand what I'm talking about visually. So I like to apply a very similar approach in cell and gene therapy. I would like to talk to everybody. I'd like to tell everybody what the advantages are to produce an individualized therapy and what we can do, because it's curative in many ways. It's all new, but it's going to be marvelous what we can achieve in the future. Also, there's something that's called Act of Hope coming, which is an organization built by Autonomous, and we are trying to get everybody together to brainstorm. It's a nonprofit organization to actually get accomplished what Stuart just alluded to. We want to make sure that everybody's talking to each other, that we want to find out what we need, what needs to be made. And then I think in the long run, we want to make equipment, materials, and reagents that everybody can use in a standardized fashion. We can get it everywhere, and we can really implement the process that we have so painstakingly developed together. And everybody should profit from that. Profit in a way that we can actually treat the patient and cure the patient. That's the profit at the end.
Perfect. Thank you so much for talking to me today, both. It's been wonderful to gain your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Felicity. Nice to see you.
Thanks again to the expert panelists participating in this episode of From STEM to Stern, Stuart Lowe and Gerhard Bauer, for the great discussion. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll look forward to welcoming you to the next instalment of our panel discussion series in May, which will focus on excipients. You've been watching From Stem to Stern from the Pharma Navigator, the essential video panel series for drug development and manufacturing professionals. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can also visit thepharmanavigator.com for even more expert analysis. Join us next time on From Stem to Stern.